I stood alone in the funeral home, staring at the polished oak casket that held my husband Thomas. The flowers surrounding him were beautiful, white lilies and blue hydrangeas, his favorites. I had chosen every single one. I had paid for every single one. The room was so quiet I could hear the clock on the wall ticking. Each tick felt like a hammer against my chest. I kept glancing at the door, then down at my phone, then back at the door. They would come. They had to come. What kind of parents missed their own son's funeral? Mrs. Carter. The funeral director approached me gently, his voice soft and careful like he was talking to something fragile and broken. Maybe I was. We're 15 minutes past the scheduled time. Should we begin? Just 5 more minutes, I whispered, gripping my phone tighter. They're probably stuck in traffic. He nodded slowly, that pitying look in his eyes that I had seen so much lately, and walked away. Behind me, in the very last row, sat Diane. My best friend from work, my only friend, really. She had taken off work to be here. She was the only one who had. 20 chairs sat empty in front of her. 20 chairs I had carefully arranged, hoping, praying, that Thomas's family would fill them. I looked at my phone again. 3 days ago, I had called Margaret, Thomas's mother. My hands had been shaking as I gave her the funeral details. Tuesday at 2 o'clock, I had said, my voice barely holding together. At Riverside Funeral Home. Will you be there? There had been a pause. Too long, too cold. Then Margaret's crisp voice came through. Of course we'll be there, Olivia. He was our son. Our son. The son she had visited exactly twice during his 6-month battle with cancer. The son she had called dramatic when he could barely get out of bed. The son, she said, was overreacting when the doctors gave us the diagnosis that shattered our world. The clock hit 2:25. I felt something break inside my chest, something that had been barely holding together with hope and denial. They weren't coming. The funeral director approached again. This time I didn't make him ask. I just nodded. He started the music, a soft piano piece that Thomas loved. I had made a playlist weeks ago, sitting beside his hospital bed, tears streaming down my face while he slept. I walked to the front on legs that didn't feel like mine. I had written a eulogy. I had practiced it in the mirror, trying not to cry, failing every time. I looked out at the empty chairs and felt like I couldn't breathe. Thomas was... My voice cracked and I had to stop. I gripped the sides of the podium. Thomas was the kindest person I ever knew. He was gentle and patient, and he made me laugh even on the worst days. My eyes filled with tears and I could barely see the words I had written. He loved old books and terrible jokes and Saturday morning pancakes. He loved rainy days and classical music, and he always put others first. I thought about his family, about how they had taken and taken from him his whole life and given so little back. He deserved better, I whispered. And I wasn't sure if I meant better than cancer, or better than them, or better than everything. He deserved so much better than this. I couldn't continue. The words swam on the page, and my throat closed up, and I just stood there crying in front of an empty room. Diane came up and gently guided me back to my seat. She didn't say anything. There was nothing to say. The service ended. The funeral director offered his condolences. Some of Thomas's co-workers had sent flowers with cards. Nice people who barely knew him had shown more respect than his own blood. After it was over, after the funeral director and his staff had quietly left the room, Diane sat down beside me. Olivia, she said carefully, I need to show you something. She pulled out her phone and hesitated. I don't want to upset you more, but you need to see this. She turned the screen toward me and I saw Jessica's social media page. Jessica, Thomas's younger sister who had visited him once in 6 months and spent the entire time talking about herself. The post was from 40 minutes ago. The photo showed the entire Carter family sitting around a long table at Giovanni's, the expensive Italian restaurant downtown. Margaret wore a glittering silver dress. Harold sat beside her in a suit. Brandon, Thomas's older brother, raised a champagne glass. Jessica smiled wide at the camera, her makeup perfect. The caption read, "Celebrating 35 years of love. Happy anniversary to the most amazing parents. Family is everything. Family is everything." I stared at the photo until it blurred. They were all there, every single one of them. Margaret and Harold and Brandon and Jessica, laughing, celebrating, toasting, while their son, their brother, lay in a casket across town. I checked the timestamp. The photo was posted at exactly 2:15, right when Thomas's funeral was supposed to start. They had chosen a party, an anniversary party, over their own son's funeral. I felt Diane's hand on my shoulder, but I couldn't look away from the photo. Margaret's smile, Harold's proud expression, Brandon's expensive watch catching the light, Jessica's perfect hair. Not one of them thinking about Thomas. Not one of them caring that they had abandoned him one final time. The funeral home was empty now except for me. Even Diane had stepped outside to give me privacy. I walked slowly to the casket and placed my hand on the smooth wood. Inside was the man I loved. The man who had held me when I cried and kissed my forehead every morning and told me I was his whole world. The man whose own family couldn't be bothered to say goodbye. "They didn't even say goodbye to you," I whispered into the silence. And that's when I knew. Something had broken inside me that would never be fixed. Something had changed that couldn't be unchanged. They had made their choice. Now I would make mine. I woke up on the couch, still wearing my black funeral dress. The fabric was wrinkled and twisted around my body. Sunlight streamed through the curtains, too bright, too cheerful for how dead I felt inside. My phone lay on the coffee table, the screen lit up with notifications. I reached for it with a heavy hand. 47 missed calls, 63 text messages, all from the Carters. I dropped the phone like it had burned me. I couldn't deal with them. Not yet. Not ever, if I was being honest. My head pounded as I sat up. I hadn't eaten since yesterday morning. I hadn't slept in an actual bed. I had just collapsed on the couch at midnight, too exhausted to even cry anymore. The house felt wrong without Thomas. Too quiet. Too empty. Even the air felt different. I stood up slowly, my body aching, and walked to the bookshelf. My hands moved on their own, pulling down the old photo album with the worn leather cover. Thomas had made it for our first anniversary. He had spent weeks organizing photos and writing little notes beside each one. I sat down on the floor and opened it. The first photo showed Thomas and me at the community book fair 8 years ago. I was holding a stack of old novels and laughing at something he had said. He was looking at me like I was the most amazing thing he had ever seen. I remembered that day perfectly. I had been browsing the classic literature section when this gentle-looking man asked if I had read East of Eden. We talked for 2 hours. He asked for my number. I said yes before he even finished asking. I turned the page and saw photos from when I first met his family. There was one from that awful dinner at the Carter house. I was smiling in the photo, but I remembered how terrible that night had been. Margaret had opened the door and looked me up and down like I was something stuck to her shoe. "So you're the librarian," she had said. Not even a hello first. Dinner was worse. Margaret asked where I grew up. When I said Riverside Heights, she wrinkled her nose. "Oh, that neighborhood." She asked about my parents. When I said my dad was a mechanic and my mom was a nurse, she exchanged a look with Harold. "And you work at a public school library?" Margaret had asked, stirring her wine. "Do they pay much for that sort of thing?" Thomas had grabbed my hand under the table. "Olivia loves her job. She's amazing with the kids." "I'm sure she is," Margaret said in a tone that meant the opposite. Brandon had barely looked up from his phone all night. Jessica kept talking about her sorority and didn't ask me a single question. Only Harold had been somewhat polite. though he never disagreed with anything Margaret said. I flipped through more pages. Our wedding photos. I had wanted something small and meaningful. Margaret had wanted something big to show off to her friends. We compromised with a medium-sized wedding that nobody was really happy with. In the wedding photos, Margaret wore white. Actually white, like a bride. When my mom pointed out how inappropriate that was, Margaret said, "Oh, this old thing? It's cream, not white." It was white. She also complained loudly about our venue. A garden wedding? What if it rains? This is so risky. It didn't rain. It was a beautiful day. She still complained. I turned another page and stopped. It was a photo from 2 years ago, Christmas at the Carter house. Thomas and I sat together on the couch, his arm around me. We were smiling, but I could see the tiredness in both our eyes. That Christmas, Margaret had given Brandon and Jessica expensive gifts. Designer things. She gave Thomas a $20 gift card to a bookstore. "Because you like reading," she said dismissively. I found photos from when Thomas got sick. There weren't many. Nobody wanted to take photos during that time. But there was one Diane had taken at the hospital. Thomas was sleeping, and I was holding his hand, my head resting on the edge of his bed. I remembered the day he got diagnosed. 6 months ago, though it felt like 6 years. He had been tired for weeks. Then the doctor said those words that destroyed everything. Stage 4 cancer. I had called Margaret immediately, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. "Cancer? Are you sure?" she had said. Thomas always was a bit dramatic about being sick. Remember when he thought he had pneumonia and it was just a cold? "Margaret," the doctor said, stage 4. Well, doctors are wrong sometimes. I'm sure it's not as bad as they're saying. But it was. It was worse. Harold and Margaret visited once in the first month. They stayed 20 minutes. Margaret spent most of it talking about Brandon's new promotion. Brandon came twice. Both times he suggested Thomas was giving up too easily. "You just need to stay positive, man. Mind over matter." Jessica visited once. She talked about her new boyfriend the entire time. She took a photo with Thomas and posted it online with the caption, "Praying for my big bro," and never came back. I closed the album and pressed it against my chest. Those people had slowly broken Thomas his entire life. They had made him feel small and unimportant. And even at the very end, they couldn't give him one day, one single day, to say goodbye. Loud knocking suddenly erupted from my front door. Aggressive, demanding knocking. I froze. More knocking. Harder this time. I stood up slowly and walked to the window, staying hidden behind the curtain. I looked out at my front porch and my stomach dropped. Margaret stood there in an expensive pantsuit, her face twisted in anger. Harold stood beside her, looking uncomfortable. Behind them were Brandon in a business suit and Jessica in designer sunglasses. All 4 of them. On my porch. "Olivia!" Margaret's voice came through the door, sharp and furious. "Olivia, open this door right now. We need to talk about your disrespectful behavior." My hands clenched into fists. The anger that had been building since yesterday suddenly roared to life inside my chest. I walked to the front door and yanked it open. I stood in the doorway, blocking the entrance. I didn't invite them in. I didn't smile. I didn't say hello. Margaret's eyes widened slightly, like she was shocked I had actually opened the door. Then her face hardened again. "Well," she said, her voice dripping with cold anger, "I hope you're proud of yourself." I just stared at her. I didn't trust myself to speak yet. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" Margaret continued, stepping closer. "Do you have any idea how you've made us look?" Behind her, Harold shifted uncomfortably. Brandon checked his phone. Jessica crossed her arms and glared at me. "What I've done?" I finally said, my voice quiet but steady. "Yes, you," Margaret snapped, "making us feel guilty for missing the funeral. We had plans, Olivia. Important plans that were scheduled months in advance. Your son's funeral, I said slowly, was less important than a party. It was our 35th wedding anniversary. Margaret's voice rose. Do you know how significant that is? We had family coming from out of state. We had deposits on the venue. We couldn't just cancel everything. I felt something hot and sharp rise in my throat. You couldn't cancel a party to say goodbye to Thomas. Don't you dare make this about not caring. Margaret pointed her finger at me. I raised that boy. I sacrificed everything for him. We loved him. You visited him twice, I said, my voice shaking now. In 6 months. Twice. We have lives, Olivia, Brandon spoke up from behind his mother. We have jobs and responsibilities. We couldn't just drop everything because Thomas had cancer. I looked at Brandon, at his expensive suit and his cold eyes. He was your brother, and he would have understood, Brandon said flatly. He always understood family obligations. Family obligations, I repeated, almost laughing. Is that what you call it? Jessica pulled off her sunglasses and I saw her eyes were red. For a moment I thought maybe she had been crying about Thomas. Then she spoke. Do you know what people are saying about us? Jessica's voice was shrill. Do you know how many people have called us, texted us, judging us? My boyfriend's mother called me heartless. Heartless! His family thinks I'm a terrible person now. Are you seriously making this about your boyfriend? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You don't understand what it's like, Jessica said, her voice breaking. Everyone is attacking us on social media. Someone shared your friend's post about the funeral and now everyone knows we weren't there. My reputation is ruined. Your reputation, I said quietly. Thomas is dead, and you're worried about your reputation. Don't be dramatic, Margaret cut in. Thomas wouldn't want us fighting like this. He would want us to move past this misunderstanding. Misunderstanding, I repeated. The word tasted bitter. Yes, Margaret said firmly. There was a scheduling conflict. These things happen. But now you need to help us fix this. Fix what? The damage you've caused? Margaret said like it was obvious. We need you to post on social media that there was a conflict and that we wanted to be there. We need you to tell people it wasn't our fault. I stared at her. At this woman who wanted me to lie for her. To protect her image while her son lay in the ground. No, I said simply. Margaret's face flushed red. Excuse me? I said no. You ungrateful little. Margaret started, but Harold put a hand on her arm. She shook him off. After everything we've done for you, after we welcomed you into this family, you never welcomed me, I said, my voice getting stronger. You tolerated me. Barely. That's not true. Harold finally spoke, his voice weak. We always tried to include you. I looked at Harold, this man who had stood by silently while his wife belittled his son for years. Did you love him at all? I asked quietly. The question seemed to stun them all into silence. How dare you? Margaret's voice was ice. How dare you question my love for my son? I carried him for 9 months. I raised him. I fed him and clothed him and put a roof over his head. I sacrificed my career, my body, my youth for my children. But did you love him? I asked again. He was always ungrateful. Margaret's voice rose higher. Just like you. Nothing was ever good enough for Thomas. We gave him everything and he never appreciated it. And then he married you and became even more distant. He became distant because you treated him terribly, I said, my own voice rising now. You ignored him and dismissed him and made him feel worthless. That's a lie, Margaret shouted. I was a good mother. I am a good mother. Then why didn't you come to his funeral? The words exploded out of me. Why couldn't you miss one party, one celebration? Why wasn't he worth that to you? Stop it, Jessica said, tears streaming down her face now. Stop making us the villains. We're grieving too. Are you? I looked at each of them. Because yesterday you were drinking champagne and smiling for photos. Brandon stepped forward, his face hard. Enough of this. We didn't come here to be attacked. We came to discuss practical matters. Practical matters? I asked. Thomas's will, Brandon said bluntly. His assets. We need to know what he left and how it's being distributed. And there it was. The real reason they came. He left everything to me, I said, watching their faces. Margaret's mouth fell open. Brandon's jaw clenched. Jessica gasped. Harold looked at the ground. Everything? Margaret's voice was barely a whisper. The house. His savings. His life insurance policy. Everything. That's impossible, Brandon said. He wouldn't cut out his own family. You cut yourselves out, I said. He wasn't in his right mind, Margaret said quickly, her voice desperate now. The cancer medication. The pain pills. They affected his thinking. He didn't know what he was doing. He knew exactly what he was doing. We'll contest it, Brandon said firmly. We'll sue. No court will uphold a will made by someone on that much medication. Try it, I said, surprised by how calm I felt. You manipulated him, Jessica said, pointing at me. You isolated him from us and then made him leave you everything. I loved him, I said simply. That's something none of you know anything about. Margaret's face twisted with rage. Get out, she said. This is my house, I reminded her. Not for long, Brandon threatened. We'll fight this. We'll take everything. Get off my porch, I said, my voice steady and cold. Now, you haven't heard the last of this, Margaret said, turning sharply. You were never really family anyway. Those words should have hurt. A month ago they would have destroyed me, but now I felt nothing but relief. I watched them walk away, their angry voices fading. I closed the door and locked it. Then I noticed it. A white envelope on the floor by the door. It must have fallen from the mail slot. I picked it up and my heart stopped. The return address was from Thomas's lawyer. Across the front in red letters, urgent, to be opened after funeral. My hands trembled as I tore open the envelope. Inside were several folded documents and a handwritten letter. I recognized Thomas's messy handwriting immediately, and my eyes filled with tears before I even read a single word. I sat down right there on the floor, my back against the door, and carefully unfolded the letter. My dearest Olivia, it began, and I had to stop because I could hear his voice so clearly in my head. If you're reading this, I'm gone. I'm so sorry I had to leave you. I'm sorry for the pain you're feeling right now. I wish I could be there to hold you and tell you everything will be okay. But I need to tell you some things. Important things I should have said while I was alive but was too weak to say. I know my family didn't come to my funeral. I know that sounds crazy, but I know my mother. I know how she thinks. She probably scheduled something else. Something she deemed more important, and she chose that instead of saying goodbye to me. I'm not surprised. I'm not even hurt anymore. I've had 6 months to accept who they really are. Olivia, I need you to understand something. My family never loved me the way parents should love their children. I was always the disappointment. Too quiet, too sensitive, too ordinary. Brandon was the golden child with his business degree and his ambition. Jessica was the baby, the princess. I was just there, taking up space. I spent my whole life trying to earn their love, trying to be good enough. It took dying to realize I never would be. But then I met you. And you loved me exactly as I was. You never needed me to be more or different. You just needed me to be me. You were my real family, Olivia. The only family that ever mattered. Now, I need you to listen carefully. 2 years ago, my grandmother on my mother's side passed away. She left money to all 3 of her grandchildren. Brandon got his share, Jessica got hers, and I got mine. My mother doesn't know about my inheritance. Grandma Ruth knew how controlling my mother was, so she had her lawyer handle everything privately. She left me $450,000. I never told my mother. I never told anyone except you, and I swore you to secrecy. I kept that money separate, safe, invested. I've now put all of it into a trust fund with only your name on it. My mother can't touch it. My father can't touch it. Brandon and Jessica can't touch it. It's yours. All of it. I've instructed my lawyer to only reveal this trust after my funeral, and only if my family failed to attend. I wanted proof of who they really were. I wanted you to see clearly, without any doubt, that they never cared. And now you have that proof. There's more, my love. I've also written letters to each of them. Individual letters that my lawyer will deliver today. I need them to know that I saw them clearly. That I understood exactly who they were. I've enclosed copies for you to read. I want you to know what I said. Use this money to build a beautiful life. Travel to all those places we talked about. Buy books. Drink expensive coffee. Adopt a dog. Be happy. Live freely and love yourself, and never let them make you feel small. You were the only real family I ever had. I love you forever, Thomas. I pressed the letter to my chest and sobbed. Even gone, even from beyond death, Thomas was still protecting me. With shaking hands, I picked up the other papers, copies of the letters he had written to his family. The first was to Margaret. Mom, I forgive you for never loving me the way you loved Brandon and Jessica. I forgive you for the comparisons and the criticisms and the constant disappointment in your eyes when you looked at me. I forgive you for choosing a party over my funeral, because it's exactly what I expected. I hope your anniversary celebrations and your social status and your perfect image bring you more joy than your children ever did. I hope it was worth it. The second was to Harold. Dad, I'm disappointed you never once stood up for me. Not once in 32 years did you tell Mom she was wrong about me. You just stood there silently while she tore me down. You taught me that silence in the face of cruelty is its own kind of cruelty. I wish you had been braver. I wish you had loved me enough to defend me. The third was to Brandon. Brother, we could have been close. We should have been close. But you always saw me as competition, as someone beneath you. You made fun of my kindness and called it weakness. You mocked my career and my choices. I'm sad we were never real brothers. I'm sad you never knew me. You missed out on someone who would have been loyal to you forever. The last was to Jessica. Jess, I hope you find happiness. I hope your boyfriend treats you well and your life turns out exactly how you want it. I'm sorry we were never close. I'm sorry you never cared enough to try. I wish you well, but I know you never really knew me, and you never really wanted to. I read each letter twice. They were perfect, honest and painful and true. Thomas had seen his family clearly. He had known exactly who they were and what they would do, and he had made sure I would be okay. My phone rang, making me jump. I looked at the screen. It was a number I didn't recognize. I answered it. Mrs. Carter, this is attorney William Price. I handled your husband's estate. Yes. My voice came out rough from crying. I wanted to inform you that I've just delivered the letters your husband wrote to his family members. I felt it was important to let you know that his mother has already called my office 3 times in the last 15 minutes. What does she want? She's demanding information about the trust fund. She's threatening legal action. She's quite upset. I almost laughed. Of course she was. The trust is secure, Mrs. Carter. Completely ironclad. There's nothing they can do to access it. Your husband made absolutely certain of that. Thank you, I whispered. There's one more thing, the lawyer said. Your husband also left instructions for me to tell you this personally. Don't let them guilt you. Don't let them manipulate you. You owe them nothing. Tears streamed down my face. Thank you for telling me. After we hung up, I sat there on the floor, surrounded by papers and letters, and I felt something shift inside me. Thomas had given me the truth. He had given me freedom. He had given me the means to escape. Now I just had to be brave enough to take it. 3 days later, they came back. All 4 of them standing on my porch again. But this time they looked different. Margaret's eyes were red and puffy. Her perfect makeup couldn't hide the fact that she had been crying. She clutched Thomas's letter in her hand, the paper wrinkled like she had read it 100 times. I opened the door but said nothing. "Olivia?" Margaret's voice cracked. It was so different from her usual sharp tone. "Please, can we talk? We don't have anything to talk about," I said calmly. "I made a mistake," Margaret said, and actual tears ran down her cheeks. "I see that now. I misunderstood. I didn't realize how sick Thomas really was. I thought we had more time." I had seen Margaret cry exactly once before, at her own mother's funeral, and even then it had seemed performative. But these tears looked real. It didn't matter. I saw right through them. "You had 6 months," I said quietly. 6 months of time. Harold stepped forward, his face desperate. "Olivia, please, we want to make amends. We want to work together as a family." "We were never a family," I said. "Don't say that," Jessica said, her voice small. She wasn't wearing makeup today, and she looked younger, almost vulnerable. "We can fix this. We can start over." Brandon cleared his throat. He looked uncomfortable in a way I had never seen before. "Look, maybe we didn't handle things the best way. Maybe we were too focused on our own lives. But Thomas wouldn't want us fighting like this. Now you care what Thomas wanted," I said. "We always cared," Margaret insisted, her voice rising with emotion. "He was my son, my baby. I carried him and raised him and loved him." "You have a strange way of showing love," I said. "People make mistakes," Harold said quietly. "We're not perfect, Olivia. We're human. We got caught up in the anniversary plans and we made a terrible choice. But we're here now. We're trying." I looked at the 4 of them, at their sad faces and their desperate eyes and their carefully chosen words, and I saw exactly what this was. "You read the letters," I said. They all went quiet. "You know about the trust fund now. You know there's money you can't touch, and that's why you're here." "That's not fair," Jessica said quickly. "We're here because we care about you." "You never cared about me before," I said. "Why start now?" "This isn't about money," Brandon said, but his voice wasn't convincing. "This is about family, about coming together and redistributing Thomas's assets fairly." There it was. "Fairly," I repeated. "Thomas was medicated when he set up that trust," Margaret said, her tears drying up now, her voice getting firmer. "He wasn't thinking clearly. If he had been in his right mind, he would have included his family. He would have made sure his parents and siblings were taken care of. He was completely clear-minded," I said. "He knew exactly what he was doing." "We could take this to court," Brandon said, trying to sound reasonable. "We could fight it, but that would be messy and expensive and painful for everyone. Or we could sit down like adults and work out a fair agreement." I looked at each of them. Margaret with her manipulation disguised as grief. Harold with his weakness disguised as peacemaking. Brandon with his greed disguised as fairness. Jessica with her selfishness disguised as family loyalty. Thomas had known them so well. "No," I said simply. "Olivia, please be reasonable," Harold tried again. "Thomas wouldn't want division in the family. He'd want us to work together." "There is no division," I said clearly, "because we were never a family. You made that clear at his funeral. Or rather, at your party." Margaret's face hardened. "People will think badly of you for this, taking everything and giving his family nothing. They'll say you manipulated him." "Let them say it," I said, and I meant it. "You're being selfish," Jessica said, her vulnerability disappearing. "That money should be shared. We're his blood family. And yet his blood family couldn't spare 2 hours to say goodbye to him. We made one mistake, Margaret snapped, her true colors showing again. One mistake and you're going to punish us forever? It wasn't one mistake, I said, my voice steady. It was a lifetime of them. And I'm not punishing you. I'm just done. Done? Harold asked. I'm leaving, I said. I've accepted a librarian position in Colorado. I'm moving in 2 weeks. Their faces showed shock, then panic. You can't just leave, Margaret said. Watch me. What about Thomas's grave? Jessica asked. Who will visit him? The question might have made me feel guilty a week ago. Now it just made me angry. You can visit him, I said. He's at Riverside Memorial. You know, the place you couldn't be bothered to go to for his funeral. Brandon's face flushed red. You're really going to take all that money and just disappear? Yes, I said. I'm going to use it to build a life Thomas would be proud of. I'm going to live for both of us now. This is ridiculous, Margaret said, her voice cold again. You're being a child. I'm being free, I said. Free from people who hurt me. Free from a family that never wanted me. Free from all of you. You'll regret this, Margaret said, her eyes hard. You'll regret cutting us out. The only thing I regret, I said slowly, is not doing it sooner. I started to close the door, but Margaret put her hand out to stop it. He would be ashamed of you, she said, her voice like poison. I looked her directly in the eyes. No, Margaret. He'd be ashamed of you. He already was. He wrote it in his letter, remember? I closed the door, and this time I didn't just lock it. I walked away. Behind me I heard them shouting, knocking, demanding. Then, finally, silence. Then car doors slamming, and an engine starting and the sound of them driving away. I walked upstairs to the bedroom I had shared with Thomas, and looked around. Most of my things were already packed. Diane was coming tomorrow to help me load the moving truck. My phone buzzed. A text from the school in Colorado confirming my start date. I was really doing this. I was leaving everything behind and starting completely over. The thought should have terrified me. Instead, I felt lighter than I had in years. I walked to Thomas's side of the closet and pulled out his favorite sweater, the soft blue one he wore on cold mornings. I held it to my face and breathed in. It still smelled like him. I'm doing it, I whispered. I'm getting out. I'm going to be okay. I packed the sweater carefully in my suitcase. 2 weeks later, I stood in the airport with 2 suitcases and a carry-on bag. Everything else had been shipped or sold or donated. The house was listed with a realtor. I had said goodbye to the few people who mattered. I hadn't heard from the Carters since that day on my porch. I had blocked all their numbers, deleted all their contacts, erased them from my life as completely as they had erased Thomas from theirs. My flight was boarding. I looked back one last time at the city where I had loved Thomas and lost him and learned who I really was. Then I turned and walked toward my gate. The plane lifted into the sky and I watched everything get smaller below me. The buildings and streets and memories shrinking into nothing. I pulled out my phone and looked at my favorite photo of Thomas, the one where he was laughing at something I had said, his whole face lit up with joy. I'll live enough for both of us now, I whispered to the window. Colorado was beautiful. My new apartment was small but bright, with huge windows that let in golden sunshine. I unpacked slowly, carefully placing Thomas's photo on the bookshelf beside my favorite novels. I started my new job. The kids at the school were sweet and curious. My coworkers were kind. Nobody knew about my past or my grief or the family I had left behind. I was just Olivia. Just me. And that was enough. Some evenings I sat on my tiny balcony and watched the sunset paint the mountains pink and gold. I thought about Thomas and the life we should have had. I cried sometimes. I smiled sometimes. I felt both grief and relief living side by side in my chest. One morning, 3 months after moving, I woke up and realized I had slept through the whole night without nightmares. I made coffee and sat by the window and felt something I hadn't felt in over a year. Peace. My phone rang. An unknown number. For a second, my heart jumped, worried it was the Carters somehow. But the area code was local. Hello? Hi, is this Olivia? This is Karen from the animal shelter. You inquired about adopting a dog? I smiled. Yes, I did. That afternoon, I brought home a 3-year-old golden retriever named Sunny. He was gentle and calm, and he laid his head on my lap like he had always known me. I took a photo of him and sent it to Diane with the caption, "New family member." She wrote back immediately, "Thomas would love him. Proud of you." I looked at Sunny, at my bright apartment, at the mountains outside my window, at the life I was building piece by piece. Some families are born, some are chosen, and some you have to leave behind to save yourself. I had finally saved myself, and somewhere I knew Thomas was proud of me too. I was free. I was healing. I was home.